All right, sir. Mr. Chair, floor is yours.
All right. And did you tell me I do need to? I can't remember.
No, all you say is I'm calling this meeting to order. We don't have to have a vote to that.
I'd really like to vote, though. I'm calling this meeting to order. If you just happen to vote, that's cool. Thanks, everybody, for being on. And for those of you guys listening in the community, thank you for participating and showing that you care about this stuff. So thank you. This is going to be a virtual meeting where we discuss the first round of sort of aggregated scoring. So I think what we want to do from a procedural standpoint, first of all, do we need to approve any meeting minutes? Well,
yes, sir. We have the minutes from April 25th. That was our last in-person meeting at the Carvers Bay Branch Library.
Yeah.
I sent those meetings. If you don't have them or haven't had a chance to look at them, I can resend them real quick. Just let me know.
I looked at them earlier. Have other people had a chance to look at them?
Yep.
Okay. Are there any adjustments to those notes that we need to make, or is everybody okay? And if we're okay, does somebody want to move that we approve the meeting minutes?
Move that we approve the meeting minutes.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So all those meeting minutes are approved. Thank you for writing those.
Thank you, sir.
I know it takes some time to do those as well as you've been doing them. So, I mean, all that's really left on our, sorry, let's talk about process for a bit. So we're still working through the details of what the interactions are going to be and the sequencing with the county council. But basically, we've got a couple to few weeks to be done where we believe our list is as good as we can get it on different dimensions and have that submitted to the council. So, I mean, we really got another meeting or two to sort of sort that out. You guys have all gone through and reviewed the projects, and thank you for doing that. And again, I think the last several months of going through has just been an amazing way to know the county, learn the county, hear what the county cares about. And as I said, you guys have submitted all those scores, and you put them essentially either definitively or through your voting into one of three buckets, A, B, and C. And then I just took those and rescored them using the ABC buckets to get a relative ranking. And so that's what order they're in right now. And a couple of you have come back to me with some small adjustments. I've made those adjustments, and I'll show those revised adjustments to you. But I think we ought to go through sort of 1 through 60 right now and say, you know, how do we feel about this list? Do we believe that they're in the right spot? Do we need to have some debate, especially where scores are variable? Doesn't mean scores are wrong, as we've said for a long time. I'm not interested in making sure Robert's and Gary's scores are consistent between the two of you. I'm interested that you score them individually consistently, because it all works out in the wash on a relative basis. And I think that has proven very true. So I think we'll just jump into it and go through them. Does that sound reasonable? And then you guys get to consider, and if you feel like, hey, on the fly, I want to move my A to a B or my B to an A, we can do that. Or I'm also fine if you guys want to just take the time to consider that after the meeting, and then, you know, let's send an email that shows scoring adjustments. Make sense? Hey, Reed, thanks for joining.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Mr. Retailer just joined, so we now have a full slate.
Super. Thanks, Reed.
Thank you. Sorry, I thought it was 10. I apologize.
So hopefully you all can see my screen. We good?
I think you may need to scroll just a little bit. There you go. Perfect.
Okay. So right now, what you're seeing is, let me make sure I've updated it. Yep. You're seeing an aggregated score, which is this blue column, column O, top to bottom, based on the scores between P and AA, which is, you know, scoring for each and how we scored them. This is where we stand. So let's just sort of look at the first. The first three were the only three that had all of us consistently across the board scoring in the A category. The BFD water lines, BFWD water lines, the utility relocation on Black River Road, which is, you know, the hospital work that needs to be done, and the town of Andrews water and sewer. Any discussions on those three as a group? I mean, we can debate whether we want to move 1 and 2 around later, I think, but we ought to get, the A, B, and C buckets correct. Those feel about right? Any concerns with those being up there? One of the things I looked at pretty carefully as I was going through mine is making sure that we were thoughtful about column N, meaning it would have been odd, I think, if we scored something radically different than the agency's priority. Now we can, and there may be good logic in it. I just want to make sure that if we've got something super high that an agency has said is low or vice versa, I think should cause a discussion. But I think we're in good shape on these first several. Then we move into the next set. I'm gonna move you guys off my screen, where I would say Town of Andrews water system improvements, Pawleys Island North Jetty improvements, and Coast RTA. We're heavy on the A's, in a sprinkle or so of a B or maybe a C.
Mark,
Any
for me,
comments on these?
Coast RTA, I went back and looked at it. I hid one of my columns, so I didn't see the column about the additional funding, and that's where I got the C. But other than that, it would have been an A for me. So
Do you want me to move it to an A for you?
you sure can.
Yep.
Okay.
And
I only
Mr.
wanna
Chair,
do it
for those listening in the audience, it may be helpful to go through a brief explanation of what you're talking about with A, B, and C.
I'm sorry, thank you. And Walt, everybody in the community can see exactly what you guys are seeing, correct?
Yes, sir. I would assume, Randy,
Yeah, I
they
mean,
can
it's just
see the
everybody's-
streaming screen, right? Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so for folks listening, by law, which is a positive change a couple of years ago, we're going to put forward a recommended list of projects based on how much money we think we will get per year. Let's call it $10 million a year as just an easy number to talk about. So if we decide to go for 7 years, that'll be $70 million in the high priority bucket we're calling bucket A. By law, we have to also have a bucket B called a contingency bucket. In the case that either more revenue comes in, projects can't be completed for some reason, whatever that might be, or projects end up costing less than we thought, that would create, in essence, an excess of funding. And the state decided, which I think is really smart, that instead of that money just being out there and being doled out on some other basis, we create a contingency list that everybody will get to vote on. So that's bucket B. And then bucket C is, all else, all remaining, which means they'll have to, if they're going to get done, they're going to have to get funded through some other mechanism. So we're going to talk in A, B, and C buckets. Sorry, I'm fighting a cold. Okay. I think all these are, we had any thoughts here? We have a decent delta on P2 and a little bit on 6. Anybody want to debate that or have any comments on that? And our goal isn't to try to talk people into changing their scores on anything. It's just rather, to get perspectives if somebody had it as a lower end or higher end than another. Okay. Continuing on, this is where we start to get more variety. It's sort of at about project 19 or 58, where you have some A's, you have some B's, and typically are having some C's. So it's sort of spread throughout with no dominant position. I would say B's start to dominate here.
Yeah, on on 58, that was the reason why I scored it a C, and I need to revisit this after this call, but part of the analysis that I did after scoring them and after thinking about the feedback we got from the community, and then after putting all of that into ranking the projects, the forced ranking that would put them into buckets, and looking at what ended up in my various buckets and not in those buckets. Most importantly, bucket A, when I looked on my list at some of the projects that were in A versus some of the projects that were in B, and thought about them in terms of just my personal feeling on whether it's better for the county to have a new recreational facility or to provide water and sewer to 700 residents. I rank the water and sewer higher in my mind, and so when I looked at the dollars of those projects, I had to pull some stuff out of my A list, and so that's how the park ended up in. I think it was in my
Yep.
B list and ended up in my C list.
Yeah.
Mark, I have another update for Project 6. Should be an A for me also. And there's one more that in that group that needs to be a B. Project 57 should be a B for me.
Okay. I had a question. I noted this as red. Walt. MLK drainage and MP path.
Yes, sir.
I had this written down, but I didn't think it was right. Is it really GC1?
Let
Can
me
somebody
go back
validate that?
to the spreadsheet. Give me just 1 second. Y'all can continue on while I'm finding that answer.
That was one that I wanted to check on because I start worrying when we get, and that was part of the reason I rated it an A. I wanted to bring it up to discuss that if it's been rated number one relative to others, should it, should
Yes,
we be thinking about that more?
that is the top priority as ranked by county council.
Like county
And
council.
EOC facility was 2, airport water and sewer was 3, airport drive fire EMS was 4, and I could go on down the list. But that was the top project. And just for clarification, that is primarily a drainage project that will have a sidewalk laid over the top of it when it's after they put the pipes in the ground. That's actually a small part of the project. Most of the money, the cost is the drainage.
For those of you that sort of put it in the C bucket, was it the cost that sort of drove that? Because it is a big number.
Yeah, it was in part for me the cost. The other part was consistent with what I said earlier, that I prioritized water and sewer and safety and those kind of things as higher. Drainage is probably next on that list, but
Yeah.
it was just in shuffling to try to get the dollars to work out. I ended up ranking it as a C.
Yeah.
If I didn't drive up and down that road every day, especially at nighttime, and see people walking up and down that road and really on bicycles and coming up on them late at night and then having to swerve, for their safety, not for me having to swerve, I probably would have given it a C based on cost, and knowing that it is truly a safety hazard for the people that are walking up and down that road.
Yeah.
So I understand why people would put it in a lower category, but it is a drainage thing. But it is also really a safety thing in my viewing. That's why I gave it a higher rating.
Okay. I mean, well, that's one of the same reasons I struggle with number 2, the EOC facility. Just as when you think about it, you know, I get that it has value. There's no question it has value. It's just it's I think the single largest number we've got on here, and would consume, you know, a year's worth of funding or something
I
that.
did
Yeah.
have a question mark on that in my scoring sheet. Weren't they lowering that down to 6?
Well, the revised project was to incorporate a permanent 911 facility, and they could do that at the same 10 million. But the original project as submitted, they were going to revise that down to, and I think you're right, it's like 6 or 6.5. But then after getting back with the sheriff, you know, if they do it all in one clip and put the 911 in it, and they think they can still do it for 10 or a little less.
I was scoring it as if it were going to be 6.
Hmm. Well, you're welcome to. And that's what this is to test these things, so we can. You're welcome to adjust that now or think about it, either one.
I still think it's one of the big parts of our thing was a county-wide initiative, and it is one of the clear county-wide initiatives. So I do like it for that reason.
Yeah.
I do wish it were cheaper,
Yeah.
but I don't know the scale and scope, and I'm not an emergency planner, so I don't know I don't want the tail to wag the dog.
Yeah. And I got convinced listening to him that it, by definition, an emergency facility needs to be very hardy. Okay. Let me update the scoring here real quick. I personally would like to see us get 42 further up in the list for voting reasons, region balance reasons, et cetera. But again, we can talk further about that. And being the county council's number 1, it just, for it to be falling down at number, I don't know, whatever that is, 15, 16, runs the risk that it doesn't make the cut on the A list. I think we need, or you know, if we don't bond this out, it also puts it in year 4+. And we can worry. Yeah, I think first we ought to worry about what's in bucket A and bucket B and bucket C, and then worry about this detailed sequencing of them. But that would be an implication if it falls off that bucket. Okay, what about some of these other ones? Let's go to sort of look at.
Mark, at some point, can we realign or rank them based on location so we can kind of see what locations are falling where in terms of priority? That makes sense.
Yes.
So if we could just sort by column L at some
Yep.
point, just to kind of see if there's room to make adjustments accordingly.
Yep. Let's do that, Ashley.
And maybe the district would be a better way to look at it. Because, you know, we just did the area is where in our meeting areas. And that's not necessarily a good indicator, because I just kind of put what was in the closest proximity to our meeting areas.
Right.
Probably not the best way to look at it, but I did that more for discussion purposes than figuring out where things were.
Yep. We can sort on all, and probably should sort on all these to look at them in different lenses. So let's go through the list here and then go back and do what Ashley described. Any others here catch your eyes? St. Luke's sewer had a lot of variability in it. There was no B's. It was either an A or C.
Mhm.
Thoughts on that?
On this one, Georgetown County Water and Sewer District has it ranked a 5. I had in my notes when we were asking them about this project versus other sewer projects like Oatland, that whomever was speaking on behalf of the Water and Sewer District said that St. Luke would be a higher priority than it would be one of their highest priorities. And that was inconsistent with their ranking and their list. And maybe he was changing it on the fly as he was thinking about it in our meeting. But I ranked it based on that comment more so than on the ranking that they sent to us.
Others thoughts on their C's? I sort of felt the same way, Harris. I felt like it was a pretty high priority sewer issue.
On project 9, 701 water improvement phase 3, do we have, we don't have, so phase 3 can't happen without phase 1 and 2, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it seems to me we would have to have phase 1 and 2 if we're going to have phase 3. And the reason why I didn't rank phase 1 and 2 higher is because it doesn't provide any, it's my understanding at least is that it's purely for future growth, that phase 3 is the only phase of that project that would actually provide water to existing residents.
Indeed.
Well, for the clarification, if the way I understand it, phase 1 and 2 is not for the future growth. Phase 1 and 2 is to get the necessary water to the area to be able to do phase 3, which is putting water to the homes, because they don't have the capacity in the current system to provide enough water to the homes. So this is the method to get it across, and then you kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because then you open up a large section, a cross section of the county with available water as well.
I'm sorry, summarize that again, Walt. I want to make sure I heard that with a good ear.
So phase 1 and 2, phase 1 takes I think if memory serves, an 18-inch water main from the Killsock system to Black River. Phase 2 gets that water under the river and ties it on to the existing Plantersville system, because they don't have the water capacity in the Plantersville system. They only have 1 well. They can't put another well down up there. They only have 1 well, which won't give them enough water to push a volume of water all the way to the homes in Plantersville. So they have to find another source to get that water there. So that's what phase 1 and 2 does. And then once you get the water there, phase 3 goes and upgrades the pipe sizes to carry volume of water and increase the water pressure so that the homes have actually adequate water. Because right now they're having to downsize the lines because they don't have the volume of water to fill larger lines up. So they only have like 2-inch lines in the community, so they can't have fire protection. You get low water pressure. If there's a break, nothing happens. If that 1 well fails that's on that system, they don't have water. It's just it's a precariously built water system from that might not be the best way to say it, but it's nothing else can occur out in that entire system unless phase 1 and 2 happens.
Yeah.
How did the scores come out for phase 1 and 2?
What numbers are they? Let's see, where are they?
Robert, you probably know that. How did they?
Yeah, they're lower because and they didn't identify them. Killsock to Plantersville. You know,
that's the one.
You know that was my grief when Amanda was giving us the information about how all of this is supposed to work, and so I'm I'm still not sold on the fact that we can't take care, they can't engineer a water system that will take care of Plantersville and still take care of future growth. Right now, it's built. I can understand that it's built, or the design we've got is about the future growth, because even in the discussions, we're being told that even with this upgrade, going to 18-inch pipe, going all the way up Plantersville Road, to hopefully take care of the upper section around Johanna, that still wasn't going to increase those pipes in Plantersville area from anything more than the 2, and maybe an upgrade to a 6 for some of the area. So that was a concern for me, like, okay, where the area that's clamoring for water is being told, you've got to wait until we take care of people who aren't here yet. So
that I don't think that was my understanding at all, Mr. Robert.
yeah.
For, you know, because we asked the question, well, why couldn't you just go and put another well up on that side of the river? And Tommy said that they were limited on number of well permits because you can only have so many wells in the aquifer that they're pulling from. So that's why they're having to drive that water from the other side of the county. So, I mean, the initial phase is only going to do to serve Plantersville. Now, you get the added bonus of having water running across the county from the Sampit. Actually, so this is hooking onto the Sampit community water system and going all the way across the county, across the river or under the river, hooking to Plantersville. So P5, I think, is the phase 2 and 3 project. And I lost the phase 3 part. Yeah, phase 3 is right there, P9, and then P5 is above it. So, and both of them fall in the range that they could be on the A list as far as money goes. I mean, I think both of those are hand in hand.
That was a concern. You know, that was another concern for me. Sorry, Walt. You know, yeah, that was another concern for me because the amount of funds that this was going to eat up to take care of those first 2 phases was really going to restrict us on what else we can do around the county to take care of what is identified as phase 3. You know, when phase 3 is the originator of the need.
Right. It almost makes phase 3 a $20 million item in a way. Yeah. Yeah. So are we in agreement?
How did P5 score is what I think my original question was.
P5 3 A's, 2 B's, and a C.
Sorry, let me get. I messed up my panes. Bear with me 1 second.
Yeah, P5 is showing us 3 A's, 2 B's, and a C.
Well, 14 and a 13 is what
14. Looks to be where you at.
Yeah, so here we go.
14 for Killsock. And yeah, you're right, Gary. Yeah, 14, 13.
So are we in agreement? We need to treat these as a package to a great extent. I mean, I think we're sort of saying we believe the value is in phase 3. So by definition, if engineering wise you can't do it, you got to treat them as a package.
Well, just how many other projects are in Arant's area? Just curious about that too. Just thinking about it from all angles.
Yeah. By the way, I have not audited this carefully, this district thing. I want, we need a fresh set of eyes on this to make sure we got them right. But as of now, this is the list.
Yeah, there's quite a few projects in District 7, but they would be number 2 and number 3 on the District 7 list as far as scores go. So they're way up there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, remind me, so 5 and 9 go together. What was the other one that goes with it?
That was it. Those two
Just those
stand
two.
alone.
Okay,
So Project 5 is really the phase 1 and 2 of the project.
Okay,
and then so you can't have 1 and 2 without 3. And I could be completely off base. That's how my little mind understood what Amanda and Tommy were saying. Fine. Was it had to do with they couldn't put another water source up on that side because of permitting issues with drawing water out of the aquifer.
Yeah.
And just a quick correction, Walton, you can't have 3 without 1 and 2.
Correct. Yes.
This may be this kind of what Harris was talking about, the different buckets and stuff. So one of the reasons why I voted so heavy on the park, say in Merle's Inlet, was because this area is getting so much money in water and sewer. I believe water and sewer is maybe not a fundamental right, but I believe infrastructure is going to help the county long term. So Merle's Inlet wasn't getting a lot in terms of water and sewer projects or roads. So I voted heavier on the water and sewer in this area and think we should do phase 1, 2, and 3 in this area, because we saw those people in that meeting saying they needed fire hydrants. And that's a basic health and safety thing. So that's why I went heavier on the scoring here. But it's also why I said, you know what? Those grandparents need a park in Merle's Inlet. That's just a rationale of why I did what I did.
Well, from some other long range aspects of this, and I don't know that this actually came up, but just a little insight from me. If you look at the map, what ends up happening, if you put in that phase 1 and 2, not only do you have the benefit of getting water to the folks up in the Plantersville area, but you also then provide the ability to have redundancy connections for the city of Georgetown water system, the rural water system, and Browns Ferry water system, because that is going to run close enough to all of those systems. And now that whole area of the county that's covered by 3 different water systems then has that ability to have redundancy. They'll put a valve in, and if a well fails on one system, they can open that valve and get water back throughout those other systems. So I think that opens you up to solving a lot of future problems, even though right now primarily it's just going to go to serve the Plantersville community in the immediate term. I think you set yourself up for fixing long-term problems.
Mark, the only thing I can do to change or help is I would change my score. I think I can change Kilsock from a B to an A, if that would help.
Well, that's your decision. I'm not trying. When you say help, I'm not trying to get you guys to a place. Rather, just
I know you're not. I want to help because I think it should be. I think it should. I cannot help on. I can change. I can change P9, but I can help on both, moving both from B's to A's, which I want to do. I think both of them should be approved for a lot of different reasons.
Mr. Chairman, if this may help the group, if you will scroll back over to where the dollars are, and let's try to figure out where the first $70 million worth of projects are. And I would say, yes, on that column.
Yeah.
The CPST committed funded column.
Yeah.
And see where we fall with 70 million. You're about right there. So you could get all the way down. So everything above that everything above St. Luke, from St. Luke up, if it moves up or down the list, it's still in the A list.
Correct.
So it's almost, I mean, I'm not saying it's a moot point, you know, because you do have to ultimately order them, but as long as they're in that A list, then those should be projects that are, for all intents and purposes, guaranteed to get done.
Correct. Let's look a little bit lower and make sure. So we've got a lot of water. So if we call this, you know, sort of like the zone of, you know, sort of like here's the general zone of A list. All this stuff down here then becomes the contingency list.
Yep. So the next 40 million or so needs to be on a contingency list. And then we really need to build the full contingency list based on that next column, which is potential funding, just to ensure that we have enough room. It may help to color code them.
Yeah. So, sorry, let me just, for now, I'll just. So that's about 70 million. What do we say the B could most likely be?
About 40. But I think when you're building your contingency list, you need to hit 100 and let's say 110 million in that next column over into potential funding, just to make sure that we cover our bases. Does that make sense?
No, I didn't.
So the first 70 million is what we got to have in committed funding. But when you're looking at the contingency list, you need to base that on the net potential funding column. So that column needs to add up to 110 million. So if you'll start at the top of column J and add those down to where you get to 110 million, that'll tell you where your bottom line is. And you might even want to go to 115. We can play with that number just a little bit.
I'm trying to think if I understand that logic.
So if we're working off of column I solely, you may end up having more grant money come in than you think you will, and then your contingency list won't be big enough. Because if you look at Project 39, if the grant money comes in, then you're really only spending 3 million. But if you're consuming an additional 12 million on your contingency list with that one project, you need to actually have more contingency projects to consume your potential dollars.
Understand. Yeah. So we could either move to column J and have a thinner contingency list, or use column I and have a thicker contingency list.
Yes, I think you need to go well above your anticipated amount on the contingency list. You need to be conservative on your primary list, but have a robust contingency list.
Right.
Just to make sure we cover our bases.
That's the way I think about it too. I don't think this affects column I, or sorry, category A or bucket A whatsoever, but it expands bucket B significantly.
Correct.
I'm not understanding the distinction between A and B on the consideration of other funding. I mean, isn't it the same? We have to assume for both buckets that we don't get the funding legally, because
Right.
once you start to
Mhm.
execute a project, you're on the hook for that. And you've got to
Exactly.
go in sequence. So it's not like, so we either
But-
need to be conservative or not, but be consistent across the two buckets.
But the
Am I
difference
thinking
in
about it
column
wrong?
I and J is column I is the assured grant money at this point coming out of the original request. Column J is the potential grant money. So that's why the two numbers are different. Like I say, Project 39 is the best example, is that 12 million is in potential grant funding. If you go over to column, I guess what's before H, my brain is gone. See, that is committed grant money. So column I is the difference between the original project or the total project cost and the committed grant funds. Column J includes the potential grant funds. So your primary list has to work off the dollar amount in column I, and your contingency list has to work off the dollar amount in column J.
Hmm.
It makes sense in my little head.
It makes
I'm
sense
not-
to me too.
I'm not sure how to get it in anybody else's world, but you know, I got a different squirrel that runs up in my head. And sometimes he don't run in the same direction as everybody else's squirrel. So,
Okay.
So if you go in column J, start at the top and total down and see where you end up at the bottom of your green, and you'll find that it's further down. So you hit the same 70 something million. See, you get up with two
Barely.
more projects, and the difference is the committed grant funds. One of the big ones is the almost 6 million in grant funds for the Town of Andrews project. So that's the difference between committed and potential. So what you would do now is, if you'll keep going down in that same column until you hit 110 million, and then color the projects from line 43 or row 43 up to you hit the green, color those blue, and that would be your contingency list.
Hmm.
Yeah. That right.
Yes, sir. Now that would be your column B, your bucket B list, your contingency list. And then everything else in column J would be your C bucket. And then the only thing that would change is if you guys go back, reconsider your individual scores, it changes something, and something moves from white to blue or from blue to green, and then that shakes it up.
This is, I don't know, this makes our decision more difficult. I'd considered all this in my thinking, but the Merle's Inlet dredging, for example, I mean, if that grant comes through,
Yeah.
if that grant were committed right now, I'd probably have that one in bucket A, just because it leverages our dollars 20x. But I don't have it there. I have it in bucket C. But if the grant comes through a year from now and it's in bucket C, then it doesn't get funded.
Yeah, I'm with you, Harris, on that, because, you know, I'm going with what Mark had pointed out to us before. We really need to assume total cost, because grants can be set up, promised, and still no check delivered.
Yep.
You know, for
Somebody
whatever
asked me
reason.
this question, Walt. Is there any way on some of these ones that are so dependent on other funding, that we could scope them or refine the, sort of cut the thing into two pieces? Like,
Got you
is there,
back.
is there any way to do that or not?
So the other consideration here is when you, like that Merle's Inlet dredging project, you don't have to limit yourself to 40 million in contingency funding. You can put that up in the contingency list, even if you go, so that only makes your contingency list in 41 million, because we're only going to say 1 million in CPST dollars. So nothing happens unless you get the grant, and it's in the contingency list, so you're not committed to do it. So some of these other ones that have these large potential grants, and I really think that's probably the only one that's down in the C bucket, that would be a really good case for moving that up. You certainly couldn't put it in the primary list, but I think we would be doing a big disservice to the community to turn away potential, and we've already got 15 million in grant money.
Yeah. Well, let me make sure I understand, Walt. Are you saying that the treatment is different between regular and contingency in that?
Correct.
Let me just say to make sure we're all in sync and I've got it right in my head. If you put it on the A list and it gets approved, we are on the hook for execution of that sort of period, regardless of what funding comes in.
Correct.
If it goes on the contingency list, we have more control. We're not necessarily on the hook for that. We're only on the hook for what we're saying we will sponsor.
Well, you have the flex. I wouldn't say control. It's flexibility.
Okay.
For what goes in on that contingency list. But in this case, what you want to do is you want to move something like that has this grant money way up on the contingency list with the caveat on the ballot pending grant funding.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not committed because it's on the contingency list, but if the grant funding comes in and you are able to finish the other projects on the primary list, then that project gets done.
All right, make sure I understand this. On the contingency list, do we have to execute them in sequence?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's my understanding. Jim, is
so
that
the only
the way you
so
understand
only
it?
difference so the only difference between A and B is, in terms of the mechanics, is the recognition of unfunded and sort of the control or flexibility over our money versus others' money. Got it. Interesting. Okay. And we're certain about that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there can be some adjustments based on finances. So for instance, if the county council decides to issue some anticipation notes or bond for some of these projects, and that's available right away, and they want to take advantage of market rate, let's say, then they can adjust the A list around based on that kind of analysis or decision making, but they can't take it off the A list and put it down to the contingency list. So then the contingency list is the same. If they see that they're going to get to a project on the contingency list and it has a bunch of grant money attached to it, and then they see that they could also have some other dollars attached to it, and they attach some of the capital project sales tax money to it, then they can adjust it around on the contingency list. But they can't add a project to the contingency list, and they can't take one off of the contingency list.
Okay. Well, I think
So they can take our rankings and make adjustments and change the prioritization of the projects in the B list.
Over the 8-year period, they can, based on other, mostly financial implications. Yes.
Wouldn't it be better for us to be able, because if we're looking at P40 as a prime example, to make that kind of preemptive move on the contingency list, to move it higher on the contingency list, kind of, do we have that ability to safeguard it? Since it has the potential to reduce what, CPST funds are going to be going out the door.
Yeah, I think
the
I hear
short
you.
answer to that is yes.
Yeah.
Good.
So I think what you guys are saying, and I feel the same way, is that, and don't let me put words in your mouth, that we need to get 40 up on the contingency list. And we should look at any other thing that because we sort of, right, by design, we sort of said anything that's got some huge number that is hoped but not committed, it's sort of going to get punished in the scoring. Let's look at some other ones that had big numbers that big potentials. So the other big potentials are all in the $1 million range.
Yeah, and relative to the project size, they're not,
Right.
the leverage
Right.
effect is not significant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we've got this one, 39.
Yeah, that one definitely needs to be in B, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But you look,
I
mean,
think
if
it's
you
just
look at,
project 40 that needs to be moved up.
That's the one that's unique. Yeah. And I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely would change my score given that new data about the treatment of it. For sure. I mean, I'd move that to a B or an A for me. I need to relook my scoring of it. Why don't we do this? Why don't everybody offline go back to your base scoring logic and come back to me with a new number for 40 or a confirmed number for 40, whatever you think it ought to be. But I think principally we're trying to get that in the B list, right? Anybody disagree with that?
Yep. I don't think I don't think it's prudent to put something with a large potential grant unless it's just a super high priority item in the A list, but they really need to be put, because you don't want to. So if you come down from the bottom of your green column, and I know you can't see me pointing at your screen, but I am, you got the 12 million, the 4 million.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those are really big potential grant dollars. Everything is really kind of fallen exactly where you thought it would, except for a couple down at the bottom.
Yeah.
And maybe that changes your mind and we can, like I say, we can just simply expand that contingency list to include some of those other projects. And then if those grants come through, then from a financial standpoint, it would make more sense to do those, to leverage those dollars.
It's sort of interesting is, for the most part, this is a true statement, committed and potential grants ended up in the get done list, which is exactly how our scoring system was designed. And those that didn't get any committed or potential, with like one exception, make the C list.
Yeah, it kind of worked out
Sort of like planned.
almost like you expected it
like
to.
We thought about it.
Yep. Unintended consequences, let's say.
So come back to me. So to-dos, relook at 40 and any others you want to, but that's sort of where we're landing at this point in time. Let's do what Ashley suggested now. Just take a quick spin through how these things are sorting out. Apologize for sneezing. Let's just sort of spin through these. So as currently scored, just for math purposes, let me move this up. It's painful watching somebody fat finger through a spreadsheet. And
We were all thinking it, but nobody wanted to say it.
I'm not jumping on that grenade. I'm just trying to keep up with the mouse.
All right.
I think you got to go over a little bit to the left. There you go.
But basically, under the current modeling, plant would get 2 in.
You know, and that's why I think having the dredging in there as a contingency with all
Yeah.
anticipation of getting that grant in there is really big for Merle's Inlet because it's a big tax base.
Yeah.
And that is a big part of the tax base is people boating and
Yeah.
walking up and down the boardwalk. So I think Councilman Elliott, that would be a really good thing for him.
Yeah.
And we maybe have to go back in and adjust those districts because all of that town of Andrews stuff is, you know, the town of Andrews actually splits between 3 and 5.
Right. Well, that would be super helpful since you know this better than anybody. Would
Yep.
you go through and column M and get column? I'll send you the updated spreadsheet, but if
Yes,
you
sir.
could get
I was
column
going to say, if
M.
you'll send me the updated spreadsheet, I'll adjust those districts.
But long story short on this, it looks like we've got a decent balance, or at least at this point in the process, it's pretty solid balance.
How about Ricardo?
About what?
Yeah, she's
Stella
got 2 in the
McCarter.
green at least. It really is a well-balanced list. And I mean, and that's fantastic that it came out that way.
I mean, it really
Yeah.
did. That wasn't politicized. That was just.
Yeah, when I looked at it, I looked at it in terms of the number of projects submitted by district as a percentage of the total,
Yeah,
and then the dollar amount by district as a percentage of the total, and compared that to what I ranked in the different categories. And without making any adjustments whatsoever, it came out fairly balanced, I think. So I think you're right. I think this just kind of naturally happened, which is nice.
Yeah, and
I
Mark,
think
you
that was
actually
lucky.
have the town of Andrews projects in 3 and 5. For some reason, it just didn't pull when you did the sort just a minute ago. I don't know why it didn't, or maybe I missed it.
Well, let me look at the way I did this. See if I picked the right.
Well, getting the council members to vote on it and then getting people to vote on an additional tax, you know, it has to be projects that are going to benefit the entire county. So
let's look at these and see if I got these right. So town of Andrews. Whoa, why'd that happen?
I think that might have been what happened before, was you had accidentally scrolled up just a little bit and hit them.
Oh,
So
okay.
yes, the districts are actually correct. Yep.
Is that true for the stormwater improvements, Johnson and Newton?
Mm-hmm. Well,
Okay.
Yep.
no, that would be 3 and 5 as well. I'm sorry. That'll be Carolina and Newton.
Yeah, that's
There
right.
you go.
Okay. All right. Anyway, if you could audit that and make sure that's accurate.
Yes, sir, I will.
Well, that would be super helpful. Okay.
So Harris, I would suggest from your comment that the way we were purposeful in setting up all of our scoring system and the priorities that we were given to each category also led to the ballot.
Yeah.
So you recall our discussions about this system probably wouldn't work in any of the other 45 counties, but this is a Georgetown system that works in Georgetown.
I think that's right.
Okay, so let's talk next steps. Step number 1, let me write these down. Walt, to audit the council attribution. Make sure we got that right.
Yes, sir.
Each one of you guys to relook your underlying scoring on everything, and especially the dredging, and come back to me with any adjustments you want to make to your scoring in the A, B, and C buckets. And then 3, me, Walt, and Jim to work really hard in the next couple of days to outline very specific steps to get to done, including council interactions. Because Jim and Walt, while you were out, Jim and I were talking about that. I think we need to get to a very, very, very specific game plan around those interactions, because there's a little bit of difference of opinion of how that should work, but we need to work through that.
Yes, sir.
And then
So just, I'll be a little hard to get a hold to next week. I'll be out of town the entire week, on vacation, believe it or not. And we've debated on whether to go or not, but they've decided to go ahead and go. So it may be nighttime when I'm back in the hotel that I'm able to look at stuff. I was really hoping, Jim, you and I had some discussion about if you would start trying to build that question. I've got an attorney that's going to help if we can kind of get the framework, and then she can help really touch that up. And then I'll be able to communicate, via email is probably going to be the easiest way. Kind of, if y'all send me something during the day, I'll try to work on it at night, and then y'all can have it the next morning to look at. But I'm pretty much out of pocket all day Saturday, and in the late Saturday night with all this other stuff going on. But I'll do everything I can to not slow the process up. And then if you guys want to have another meeting like this, Randy needs to be. He's got a lot going on next week, so I would like to get him involved in discussion of timing if y'all want to try to get back together as a group next week. And I think Randy said maybe Thursday was going to be probably the better day for him. So that would give Mr. Chair and Jim and myself time to get all that ironed down. Then y'all can get back together as a group on Thursday. And then hopefully the following Monday or Tuesday, we have one last little wrap up and prepare for the 28th meeting, where we'll have a workshop with County Council, present them at least a preliminary question, and go over the scores just like you guys did today, the rationale behind it, some insight into the projects, because I don't think they're all up to speed on all of the projects, as definitely not as in depth as you guys are. So it's going to be a rapid process. And I don't mind talking in front of a group. So as much as you guys want me to do, I am more than willing to do that. Or if any of the commission members would like to speak, or y'all come up with a game plan to tag team this, I think that's great. The work that you guys have done on this is beyond anything that I had hoped to accomplish. I think this has come out so stellar and fantastic, from the get-go, from the entities putting these well-crafted, well-thought-out projects together. I think there's so much community benefit in all of this, and you guys have put your own insight into it. I think we got a really good story to tell.
I do too. So given all that, that makes sense. Can you guys meet next Thursday? I'd nominate 12 to 1 o'clock. Could we do that? We can find some other times, but that was open on mine.
Mr. Chair, this is Randy,
Yes,
the
I
the
was
man
gonna-
behind
I
the
was gonna
curtain.
say
Yeah,
the
that
one-
worked for me.
Hey, Randy, that does. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks,
And
Randy.
that works better
Works
for
for
me.
me
I
too.
was gonna say to Walt's comment about evenings, that Thursday evening would not work for me, but during the day would.
Can anybody not do 12 to 1 next Thursday?
Yeah,
I
and I mean,
cannot.
and I won't be able to do that. So that's why I'm just saying, I was saying I would do my work in the evening time in preparation for
understand.
that meeting.
Okay. You cannot do that, Ashley?
I cannot.
I really want our final button up to have everybody on it. Could you, about 8 to 9 a.m. Could,
I can do after 12. I've got a board meeting and a training.
Well, we all know you don't do anything, Miss Ashley.
Nothing.
You, you don't have
absolutely
17
nothing.
jobs or anything like that. So
It's up to 18. You missed it.
how's 2 to 3 look on Thursday?
I
do
have
that.
my board meeting from 2 to 5.
How about 1 to 2? 1 to 2
I can
work?
do that. I can do 1 to 2.
I can do
Ashley?
one. Yes.
Okay. Randy, can you support us in that?
I sure can.
All right. Walt, would you mind sending a
I'll do the
set up a
invite,
note for 1 to 2?
and I will make sure we do an agenda.
Yeah. Oh, please. Yeah. Yeah. They don't need to get out Wednesday. Okay.
It'll be a one item. You don't have to worry about minutes. Well, it may be your last official meeting, so we'll do the minutes. How does that? I don't even know how that would work. I got to ask somebody. So if you approve these minutes at the next meeting, then you'll have minutes at that meeting, and if that's the last minute meeting,
I think they just kind of hang out there, Walt.
I'm assuming. I've never faced that.
Or you can approve
Before.
them at that council workshop.
You're absolutely right, sir.
Can you
Well,
approve
what time
minutes?
is the workshop?
We would normally have it at like 4 o'clock right before the meeting.
Okay.
It's kind of how they work it. 4 or 4:15 or something like that. Just depends on how much time we think we need. I would say more time rather than less time, because this is fairly complex. It's a lot of information.
I'm sorry, which day are we talking about?
This would be Tuesday, May 28th
Got it. That's
at
what
the
I've
regular
got on my-
council meeting.
I've got on my
So we would
calendar,
start
yeah.
at like 4 o'clock prior to the
Yeah.
council meeting, unless Miss Angela wanted to change something up and start a little later.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. One last question. I know the county met with a bunch of finance and bond kind of people this in the last several days. Do you know if that was positive or negative as it
I think
relates to
that
our
was-
ability to bond this?
Yes, I think that was very positive.
Okay.
What the research is indicating is that if we put the bonding question on the referendum, that not only allows county council to borrow money to do projects for county projects, it also allows each individual entity to issue their revenue bonds to do their projects. So everybody has their own destiny and control. The one thing that was discussed and that we need to talk about as a group, I was going to bring that up at the end, is, and I'm pretty sure we can allow this. The attorneys seem to think so. With the size and scope of this, in order to get it done in a timely manner, we probably need to have some sort of allowance for project management, construction management within these projects, because the county just doesn't have enough people to, internal staff to manage all these projects with everything else that the county's going on. And then if you look at Georgetown County Water and Sewer, they will be heavily weighted on this. They don't have the staff to run multiple big projects at one time. So it is allowed in the law to allow for some money for project management. And the question becomes, do you try to attach it on each individual project or have it as a separate line item. So that's the last piece that we're trying to iron out. But I think in order to get these done in a timely manner, to get them done as cost efficiently as possible, that is something that we definitely need to have in there as project management.
I thought most of the estimates that we saw had project management line items in them.
And they may.
Many of them
I'd have
did,
to go
for
back
sure.
and look.
Many
Yeah.
of them did. Many of them did. I mean, we talked about it. I saw it explicitly. Doesn't mean everyone did.
Jim, what's your experience with this?
So thank you. So I concur with everything Walt's said there. The project management piece, the guidance I'm getting and the experience I've had in the past is it just kind of like the, if you will, parallel to the potential for bond issuance. You make it permissive or even required, but you don't get into detail of whether it's the county providing it or the responsible entity providing it. So you let that work out
Right.
after the vote is approved.
Well,
But it needs to be in there. I agree with Walt. I think the other thing I would characterize, just so you all are on the same page with this thing, discussion about financing, and essentially that ends up being anticipation notes. So notes issued in anticipation of collection of taxes. The guidance I've heard, and I'm pretty sure about this, the guidance that Angela has heard from bond counsel is that the county doesn't need to be issuing bonds for other entities. So Walt's comment about it being permissive for the other entities to do it is right on, but don't anticipate that the county's gonna issue bonds for, let's say, the town of Andrews.
Right.
That would be
Oh,
in Andrews.
got it. Yeah.
That
would
I
be
mean,
nice.
they would be in control of their own destiny on that front. So,
Walt, can you help me understand what project management is in this situation? I mean, when I think about construction project management, there are a bunch of different levels of it. And in my mind, if Georgetown County Water and Sewer hires a contractor and it's a fully designed and engineered project, they just hand it off to the contractor, and the project management on their end would be just paying the contractor's invoices as work was completed. But I don't know if it involves anything more than that, or to what extent project management is needed.
So generally, when you hire a project manager, so you have to think through the government side. We have to bid out all these projects. We have to hire all these individual contractors, the subcontractors, arrange for material deliveries, scheduling, lay down yards, all this other stuff. So what you do is you hand that off to a project manager, and they are responsible for the bidding, the vetting, all of the pre and post construction meetings, the pre-bid meetings, the coordination, scheduling, all that stuff. So they would actually oversee the contractor from inception of the bid to close out of the project, because we just don't have enough staff in our entities to handle those things. We struggle with our normal everyday day-to-day. And then when you add on this amount of workload, and there's different ways to do it. We're building the detention center with, and I won't say new, but it's relatively new. In the past 15 years or so, this is kind of how governments have started working. It's called a construction manager at risk. So basically, a construction management firm looks at a project, they get their folks together, and they say, we can build it for this amount of money. And they handle everything, is turnkey. And if the project runs over, they're responsible for it. If the project runs over, you get runs under, you get a credit back. But you know, they have the potential to make more profit if they can save money. But they also have the potential to lose profit if they don't do a good job. So it really puts the emphasis on them doing a good job and reduces the internal management and oversight that we have to do.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that it would be a private, independent contractor that would be hired for the project management piece. I know a little bit about project management and construction in the healthcare industry from my dad running hospitals and doing really big projects. And I asked him one time, why don't you just hire the contractor and let them do their thing? And he said project managers are worth their weight in gold. He said they've saved him money on every single project he's ever done. So
yep,
I'm glad to hear that.
So just so we all hear it, the other component to me that's a little bit special to capital project sales tax projects with project management is the tracking of timeliness, because your other projects depend on that project being finished on time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the cash flow issue. So you get your money quarterly. Unless you do bonds, you've got to really track that cash flow carefully too. And then that's a component where your project manager can really be heavily involved.
Jim, do we have an idea of what a project manager, well, I guess two questions. One, would there be multiple project managers or just one over the whole thing? And then two, do we have an idea of what the cost would be for a project management firm?
So I think the answer to the first is it would be multiple, mostly because there are multiple entities involved in all of this. And then my experiences is based on a request for qualifications instead of a bid price kind of thing. So then you negotiate, and some prefer to negotiate on percentage of project, and some prefer to negotiate on hourly rates. I've seen both work.
And the type of project makes a dramatic difference. If you got a project that the cost, a significant portion of the cost is in the materials versus in the labor of construction, that's going to be, and the length of time that it takes, the amount of permitting that has to be done, and all this, everything plays into what the different cost on a different project would be. If certain firms specialize in certain things, and to go back to the jail project, there's not a lot of project managers that deal with jails because they're very, very specialized construction. So your pool there is limited as to who you can get to do it. And I would say with water and sewer projects, there's a bajillion water and sewer projects every day going on in the country. So there's probably a lot of different project management firms that deal with that. EOCs, probably not so much. Fire stations, they're not very unique. So your pool there to pull from would be, and so it's supply and demand. The more supply and project management, the better negotiating power you have as far as the cost. The less specialized people, the more they're going to charge because of their expertise.
Well, right. Walt, a quick question, Walt.
Yes, sir.
With the agencies that we're dealing with in Georgetown County, we haven't done the CPST since 2014, but folks have been doing projects. So do our agencies, our directors, do they have some history, knowledge of what those kind of costs have been in the past that we can kind of get some ballpark info from?
Well, I can't speak for any of the other agencies, Mr. Robert, but since my time at the county, I think this is the first project management firm that we've engaged to do a project, because everything else has sort of been in our normal scope. So we've had staff on hand to manage those projects. You know, we have folks that build roads, you know, doing pavement, building new roads, things like that. We have folks that put down stormwater drainage piping. You know, we have those folks on staff, so we haven't, from a county perspective, we haven't had the need, but this jail is unique. We hadn't built one in 30 years. And a lot of things have changed since that point in time. So that's the only one we've engaged. I can't speak for anybody else.
So
Hey,
Tim,
I have one quick
Go ahead.
question, Jim. It's kind of personal. How long can I milk my wife calling me commissioner? Can I milk it the entire time?
I think that's a lifetime title.
Can I
All
milk
right.
it the entire 8 years?
And I'm unqualified to answer that.
Hey guys, I'm gonna ask that we wrap up here so we can stick to our time. Any last question before we call this to a close?
And we need a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Cooper, yeah. All right, hey, very good meeting. I appreciate everybody's work. We're set for next week. Walt and Jim will find each other and talk through some more of the details. You guys send me any updated scores. And with that, if we can have a motion to close, we will close this meeting.
Commissioner Gary.
Motion.
Second.
To close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you all.
We'll see you.
Thank you
All right.
later.